You walked into the store, saw the orange, the yellow, the neon green, and you bought the saw everybody swore you had to have. Millions of us did the exact same thing. But here's the dirty little secret the brand loyalty won't tell you. Some of the best-selling chainsaws on earth are coasting on pure reputation, slick marketing, and a badge on the housing. Underpowered, overpriced, or flat-out beaten by cheaper rivals. These are the 10 most overrated chainsaws everyone bought anyway. Number 10. WG322 VMAX 14-inch Model 2075-4. Let's start with the one that lives in the add-to-cart section of a late-night shopping spree. WG built its whole reputation on a simple promise: give people tool-shaped things at prices that feel impossible to pass up, and it works. WG's chainsaw is one of those impulse buys that racks up thousands of orders because the number on the tag is just so low. On paper, you're getting a 14-inch bar running on a 20-volt battery. Sounds like plenty of saw for the money, right? Here's the problem. When Consumer Reports ran dozens of chainsaws through their testing, making repeated cuts into hard oak, scoring cutting speed, handling, and long-term reliability, the WG322 VMAX landed in the absolute bottom cluster of every battery saw they evaluated. Not middle of the pack, the basement. It sat down there with the other little cordless models that simply can't move enough steel through real wood to matter. And that's the trap with a saw like this. A 14-inch bar looks capable, but a small 20-volt pack doesn't have the muscle to actually drive that whole bar through a seasoned log without bogging, stalling, or draining in a hurry. You end up leaning on the saw, forcing the cut, and wondering why a 14-inch chainsaw struggles with a branch your neighbor's saw eats for breakfast. For a homeowner nipping the occasional thin limb, it's fine, but that's not how it gets sold, and that's not why people buy it. They buy it believing the bar length equals real cutting power, and it doesn't. It's the definition of overrated, a saw whose spec sheet writes a check its battery can't cash. Cheap to buy, expensive in wasted afternoons. Number 10 on our list, and we're just warming up. Number 9. Craftsman V20 12-inch Compact, CMCCS 620 M1. Craftsman. That name carries 50 years of garage nostalgia. The brand your dad trusted, the red toolbox in every American basement. So when Craftsman slapped that badge on a compact 12-inch cordless chainsaw in their hugely popular V20 battery lineup, people bought it on faith. If you already own V20 drills and blowers, grabbing the matching saw feels like a no-brainer. Except this one earned a very specific, very brutal distinction. In Consumer Reports testing, the Craftsman V20 12-inch was the single lowest-ranked chainsaw of every model they evaluated. Gas or battery, dead last, the very bottom of the entire list. Why? Let's look at the real numbers. It's a 20-volt saw. Nominal voltage is actually 18, spinning a stubby 12-inch bar, weighing about 9.5 pounds with the 4-amp-hour battery, backed by a 3-year warranty. The testers described it cutting extremely slowly through a 10x10 oak beam, and the owner reviews are where it really falls apart. One buyer said it barely outcut an old bow saw on 4-inch limbs. Another flat-out called it weak and slow. Then there's the battery. Multiple owners reported it dying in under 20 minutes before needing a recharge. So you've got a saw with a famous American name sold to loyal homeowners that struggles with limbs you could snap over your knee. It's not dangerous, it's not a scam, it's just profoundly outmatched. Craftsman rates it for yards up to 1/4 acre, and even that feels generous once you've fed it anything harder than pine. The tragedy here is the badge did the selling. People assumed Craftsman meant capable. But a legendary hand tool name doesn't automatically translate to a legendary chainsaw. This one coasted straight into millions of garages on reputation alone, and landed at rock bottom when someone actually tested it. Number 8. Troy-Bilt TB216 16-inch gas. Now let's talk about a saw that gets bought for a very seductive reason. It's a real gas chainsaw with a real 16-inch bar at a price that undercuts the big names. Troy-Bilt is a trusted yard equipment brand. Mowers, tillers, the whole suburban arsenal. So a Troy-Bilt gas saw feels like a safe, grown-up purchase compared to the battery toys. The reality is a lot messier. The TB216 has a genuinely rough reputation for reliability, and the complaints follow a pattern that's almost comedic if it weren't your money on the line. Owners report the pull cord pulley breaking. They report the chain cover literally melting, parts failing, needing repair or replacement far sooner than anyone should tolerate on a new saw. One reviewer summed it up in a way that stuck with me. describing something like 20 minutes of cutting followed by an hour of taking the thing apart and advising future buyers to keep their tool bag close at all times. That is not a chainsaw, that is a project. The ratings back it up. At Ace Hardware, this model has averaged around 3.4 stars. At Home Depot, it does a little better, but only about half of buyers said they'd actually recommend it to a friend. When half your customers won't vouch for the thing, that's a flashing warning light. And here's the kicker. For not much more money, you can step into a small displacement saw from a dedicated chainsaw maker that just runs, cuts, and starts without a wrench in one hand. But the TB216 keeps selling because it hits that magic combination of a familiar brand, gas power, and a low sticker. People want to believe they're getting a bargain. Too often, they're buying a weekend of frustration with a bar attached. Overrated, and honestly overforgiven. Number 7. Greenworks 24 V12-inch CS24 L410. Greenworks deserves real credit. This is a company that bet the whole farm on battery power years before it was cool, and they've built a genuinely loyal following. That's exactly why this entry stings. When a brand is known as a cordless specialist, buyers assume every saw in the catalog is a winner. So the little 24-volt 12-inch model flies off the shelf on the strength of the name. But being a battery specialist doesn't repeal the laws of physics. In Consumer Reports testing, this Greenworks 24-volt 12-incher scored nearly as poorly as the dead last Craftsman, putting it among the very worst performing chainsaws they evaluated, second from the bottom of the whole pile. And the reason is the same story we keep running into. A 24-volt platform is fine for a string trimmer or a light blower. Strap it to a chainsaw with a 12-inch bar and ask it to buck actual firewood, and it runs out of torque in a hurry. Small bar, small battery, small ambitions, but it gets marketed and purchased like a do-it-all yard saw. Here's what makes it overrated specifically. The Greenworks brand halo. People see the name, remember a friend's mower that worked great, and assume the chainsaw inherits that quality. It doesn't automatically. A great battery blower and a great battery chainsaw are completely different engineering problems, and the smallest saws in these lineups are almost always the weakest link. The bigger 40-volt and 60-volt and 80-volt Greenworks saws are a genuinely different conversation. But this little 24-volt one, it's the trim and prune tool that too many people bought expecting a woodcutter. Number 7, and we're climbing toward the real heavy hitters. Number 6. Worx WG322 20V PowerShare 10-inch. If you've shopped for a cordless saw online in the last few years, the algorithm has absolutely shoved this one in your face. The Worx WG322 is one of the best-selling compact chainsaws on the internet, and I get why. It's light, around 6.2 pounds, it's cheap, it has slick auto-tensioning and auto-oiling so beginners don't have to fiddle, and it runs on the Worx PowerShare battery that fits dozens of their other tools. On paper, it's the perfect grab and go. The overrated part is what happens when reality meets the marketing. This is a 10-inch saw, and its honest, comfortable cutting capacity is roughly 6 inches of wood in a single pass. It can nibble an 8-inch branch if you baby it, but push past that and it bogs down and drains fast. Reviewers clock the real runtime at around 20 to 25 minutes of continuous cutting, and the chain speed is genuinely on the slow side compared to rivals, which you feel the second you've got a real pile of wood waiting. Then there's the durability question. The body is largely hard plastic to keep the weight down, which is fine until you're leaning on it. And there's a recurring complaint that shows up across retailer reviews, a kind of stuttering, winding start where the motor catches for a fraction of a second again and again before it finally spins up. One long-term owner reported that same fault across multiple units they'd bought. None of this makes it a bad little pruner. As a lightweight limb and shrub tool for someone who already owns Worx batteries, it's genuinely convenient. The problem is it gets sold and bought as a chainsaw full stop, and then people are shocked when it can't fell a tree or process firewood. It's a pruning saw wearing a chainsaw's marketing. Wildly popular, wildly over-asked of. Number 5. Poulan Wild Thing 2375. Ah, the Wild Thing. Say the name to anyone who's been cutting wood for a couple decades and watch the reaction. This saw has a genuine cult following, a nostalgic, half-affectionate legend built up over years of being the cheap gas saw in the back of the truck. And that nostalgia is precisely why it keeps getting bought, passed down, and rescued from garage sales and pawn shops to this very day. But let's be honest about what the wild thing actually is in its modern form. Poulan, which is owned by Husqvarna, sits at the budget end of the food chain now, and longtime saw guys will tell you these are essentially disposable, throw away and buy new machines. Not the tough, long-life Poulans of the brand's early decades. Different era, different build. The complaints are remarkably consistent across every forum you dig into. Fuel lines that go brittle, crack and disintegrate, sometimes practically vanishing. Carburetors that won't hold a steady idle out of the box, requiring a tune before the thing runs right. Little plastic and metal oil pump gears behind the clutch that strip. It's the kind of saw where you can pour good money into it chasing reliability and still not end up with something you trust. And that 18-inch bar it sometimes ships with. Experienced users call that pure marketing. The engine simply doesn't have the guts to pull that much chain through hardwood. Slap a 14-inch bar on it and it's a much more honest limbing saw. Here's the fair version. For $0 out of a garbage pile, or $20 at a yard sale, tuned up by someone who knows carbs, a wild thing can be a perfectly fine light-duty limber. But that's not how it's remembered. It's remembered as a legendary workhorse, and that reputation is doing a lot of heavy lifting that the actual saw can't. Overrated by pure nostalgia. Number 4. Echo CS2 511T Top Handle. This one's going to ruffle feathers, so stay with me, because the overrated here has a very specific meaning. The Echo CS2 511T is a beautiful piece of engineering. It's marketed as the lightest gas-powered chainsaw in North America, around 5.2 pounds dry, with a 25cc professional-grade engine and a 12 or 14-inch bar. Working arborists genuinely love it for overhead work up in the canopy, and for that job it's terrific. I'm not disputing that. The problem is who actually buys it and why. This is a top-handle saw, and top-handle saws are designed for one-handed use by trained climbers working in trees. They are, frankly, not intended for the average homeowner on the ground, and they carry a serious price to match their specialist status, commonly landing somewhere between $500 and $600. Yet the lightest saw in North America headline is irresistible, and plenty of buyers grab one as a status piece or a lightweight do-everything saw when they'd be far better served and far safer with a rear-handle saw for half the money. And here's the twist that puts it on this list. When Consumer Reports ran it through their general cutting tests, the CS2 511T actually scored as the worst of the gas saws they evaluated. Now that's partly because a tiny 25cc top-handle saw isn't built for the kind of all-purpose bucking they test for. It's a specialist tool judged against generalists. But that's the whole point. People buy it expecting a giant killer, and outside its narrow lane, it isn't one. Add in the plastic sprocket cover and handle that can crack if you drop it, and a warranty that's only 1 year for commercial users, and you've got a saw that's phenomenal for climbers and genuinely overrated for the crowd that's actually buying it on hype. Right tool, wrong owner, wrong expectations. Number 3. Ego Power Plus 18-inch CS1804. Now we're into the big leagues of overrated, the saws with the loudest hype and the deepest fan armies. Ego is the poster child of the battery is just as good as gas revolution, and the 56-volt CS1804 with its 18-inch bar is the flagship that convinced hundreds of thousands of people to ditch gas entirely. The marketing line is everywhere. 45cc gas equivalent, up to 300 cuts on a 4x4 with the included 5 amp-hour battery, neon green brushless motor, LED lights, tool-free tensioning, spinning at 11,000 RPM. It looks like the future. And to be fair, it cuts genuinely well for a battery saw. But let's puncture some of that hype with real numbers. First, the weight. That convenient cordless saw tips the scales at around 14.5 pounds in operating trim. That's heavier than plenty of capable gas saws in the same class. So much for the effortless lightweight fantasy. Then there's the runtime reality. Up to 300 cuts is a best-case number on a small 4x4. Push it into real continuous hardwood cutting and owners have reported the battery running from full to empty in roughly 20 minutes, and then you're staring down a long recharge unless you've bought a second battery. Which brings us to the quiet cost of the whole EGO ecosystem. The batteries are expensive, and extended work means buying more of them. The saw might be on sale, but the fuel tank costs a fortune. And a small design gripe reviewers keep flagging. The saw sits flat on one side for tensioning but not on the side where you fill the oil, so you're stabilizing it one-handed while you pour. Minor, but telling. The MSRP hovers around $400, though it frequently drops to $250 on sale, which is where it makes the most sense, but sold as a genuine gas replacement for serious cutting, with that 45cc equivalent badge doing overtime. For heavy users, it overpromises. Brilliant for suburban storm cleanup. Overrated as the gas killer it's marketed to be. Number 2. Husqvarna 435 Gas Chainsaw. Husqvarna, one of the two names that dominate every best chainsaw conversation on the planet. That orange and gray badge is shorthand for professional grade quality, and the 435 is one of the brand's most popular homeowner saws, the one recommended over and over to people who want a real Husqvarna without paying pro saw prices. It's got a 40.9cc X-Torque engine making 2.2 horsepower, a 16-inch bar, low vibe anti-vibration, and it's marketed hard on two features, Smart Start and an air purge system, both promising effortless, easy starting. Here's the delicious irony. The single most common complaint about the Husqvarna 435, across arborist forums, tractor forums, retailer reviews going back years, is that it can be a genuine pain to start. The saw, literally sold on easy starting, has a reputation for hard starting. You'll find thread after thread of owners, including people who recommended it to friends and family, wrestling with saws that need aggressive pulls, that flood if you touch the throttle wrong, that get temperamental when hot. Some trace it to lean carburetor settings from the factory. Either way, the pattern is impossible to ignore. And the ratings quietly tell the story. This is a saw carrying one of the most respected names in the industry, and it hovers around a 4.1 star average. Perfectly fine, but distinctly not the flawless experience the brand halo promises. Plenty of buyers have openly wished they'd bought a different saw entirely. Now, is it a bad saw? No. Set the carb right, learn its starting quirks, feed it clean fuel, and a 435 will cut wood for years. But that's the whole problem with Overrated. You're paying a premium for the Husqvarna name and the promise of premium ease, and a meaningful chunk of owners get a saw that fights them in the driveway before it ever touches wood. Bought on reputation, delivered with an asterisk. Number 1. Stihl MS170. And here it is, the most overrated chainsaw that everyone, and I mean everyone, bought anyway. The Stihl MS170. If there is a single saw responsible for more first-time buyers walking out of a dealership glowing with misplaced confidence, this is it. Understand the machine's still built here. The MS170 is the cheapest gas saw in Stihl's entire lineup, often around $200 to $220, with a tiny 30.1cc engine producing just 1.7 brake horsepower, a lightweight body around 8.6 pounds, and typically a 16-inch bar. It is, by Stihl's own positioning, an entry-level homeowner saw for pruning, trimming, and slicing up the occasional fallen limb after a storm. It is, in the words of people who love Stihl, barely even a firewood saw. It's a light pruning tool. So why is it number 1? Because of the badge. Stihl has an almost superhero reputation among professionals, and buyers transfer that entire aura onto the cheapest saw in the catalog. They walk in wanting a Stihl. The salesperson points at the affordable orange one, and they leave believing they just bought professional-grade power. They did not. They bought Stihl's smallest, weakest engine. And here's the part that really defines Overrated. The MS170 is essentially a disposable saw. It lacks the magnesium crankcase and the rebuildable engine components of Stihl's professional line. When it wears out or something major fails, it's frequently cheaper to throw it away and buy another than to properly rebuild it. That premium name is stamped on a saw you're meant to replace, not repair. It also runs a fixed flow oiler you can't adjust, and its little engine will bog the moment you ask it to do genuine work. None of this means it can't trim your hedges and clean up small branches. It can, and for a very light user it's perfectly adequate. But it is bought over and over by people convinced the Stihl badge guarantees muscle and longevity, when what they're actually holding is the brand's most basic throwaway model. Maximum reputation, minimum saw. That is the most overrated chainsaw everyone bought anyway, the Stihl MS170. Now I want to hear it. Which of these is sitting in your garage right now, and did it earn its keep or let you down? Drop it in the comments.